Welcome back to Star Wars Shovelware. My name is Luke, and today on the channel we're going to be taking a look at Airborne Kingdom, a city building and resource management game where you pilot a flying city across a procedurally generated landscape, collecting resources, upgrading and expanding your city, and attempting to reunite the world's fractured kingdoms. Now, when I saw it on the eShop, the unique premise and visuals of this one had me intrigued. So let's get into this review and see exactly what's on offer here, and make sure to like and subscribe to support the channel and stay up to date with all my latest content. So the story in Airborne Kingdom is focused around, as you may have gathered, an Airborne Kingdom, and in the game's introduction we're told that this flying city existed long ago, where it united the 12 kingdoms of the world, sharing knowledge, resources and culture. However, for some unknown reason, the Airborne Kingdom suddenly vanished. Without the guidance and counsel of the Airborne Kingdom, the ground cities slowly drifted apart, eventually becoming isolated from one another as the trade and communication ceased, and thus ended the Golden Age. Flash forward an undefined number of years, and a tapestry is discovered containing blueprints on how to rebuild the Airborne Kingdom. And so the game's storyline follows this quest as you travel the world, connecting with each of the land kingdoms and attempting to reform the alliance that once existed under the leadership of the Airborne Kingdom. Now, I quite enjoyed the concept of this one, and I thought the storyline formed a strong base for the game's campaign mode. As you begin to discover each of the game's 12 cities, you'll learn about how each of them has their own specialist product or technology to contribute, and I liked how the game's lore was implemented into the gameplay mechanics, with each of the cities offering resources or technologies to you based on their specialisations. So as I said in the intro, the main objective in Airborne Kingdom's campaign mode is to travel the land, discovering and connecting with each of the ground kingdoms, and then helping restore the city to its former glory, with the end goal being to have all 12 cities united once more under the Airborne Kingdom's command, ushering in a new golden age full of peace and prosperity for all. Now, when you first start the game, your Airborne city will consist of a single central castle-like structure and nothing more, and going through the first few tutorial sections will teach you how to build paths, housing blocks providing homes for the city's inhabitants, and your very first hangar, which enables you to gather resources and interact with cities using planes. Now, expanding your city is pretty straightforward, and I liked how intuitive it was whilst still maintaining a decent amount of depth to it. Firstly, you need to have enough resources for whatever you're going to build, and these are acquired by allocating a certain number of planes to gather them from trees, rocks and other foraging spots on the ground. Next, you need to create a path for people to actually access the building, and these are laid out in single tiles, with most buildings having a single entry and exit point to which a path must be attached. And finally, the weight of each building that you're going to construct also needs taken into consideration, as you'll need enough upward thrust to actually support the structure and remain airborne. Now, as your city grows, you'll need to add additional propellers to expand it further, and you'll also need to ensure that the thrust and weight is distributed evenly, as too much weight on one side will cause your city to tilt, which really upsets the city's population, and actually keeping the citizens happy adds another layer of depth to the game's mechanics. Things like having adequate housing and lighting contribute towards each citizen's happiness, as well as ensuring that noisy production facilities and rotors are located far enough away from the homes, and having a happy populace will attract new citizens from the settlements that you visit, which is integral to city expansion, as you need them to fly planes, construct buildings, research new technologies, and generally just to operate your production facilities and other kinds of buildings. Now, once you've nailed the basics, you can then get to exploring, and travelling around the map is as simple as clicking on a location which you want to fly to. The map is procedurally generated at the start of each game, with the locations of resources and settlements randomly dotted about the place, and you'll also find relic ruins containing relics used to buy new blueprints, and other structures which grant you new building motifs, allowing you to customise the colour of your city's buildings, paths and lighting. Now, after exploring the map a little bit, you'll eventually come across one of the 12 kingdoms, and in order to restore these to the former glory, you'll need to complete a series of missions for them, which usually involve locating and returning a specific object, or providing them with a certain amount of resources. After doing this, the city will then become allied with the Airborne Kingdom, granting you a few perks such as automatic resources every few hours and additional blueprints which can then be researched in the Academy, and the Academy itself is not only used to unlock new technologies, but also to improve existing ones, so you can upgrade things like your housing blocks, adding additional floors to them, expand your warehouse capacity, and increase things like your production efficiency or reduce the amount of food and water consumed by citizens. Now, I've given you a brief overview of what you can expect with the game, and I could have gone into a bit more depth about all the different production facilities and other stuff, but I didn't want to get too into the weeds with this one, as I usually tend to do with strategy games. I had originally intended to produce a 30 minutes to buy video for this game, but I actually found myself 5 hours deep and still playing, which says a lot about how much I actually enjoyed the game. One last thing that I do want to mention is that alongside the questing, building and exploring, there are also some light survival mechanics in Airborne Kingdom, and these require you to maintain a steady supply of food and water for your citizens, as well as coal to keep your city's engines running, but I liked how your dependency on these were kept to a minimum with plenty of ways to keep up with demand, and I think this is one of the key aspects about Airborne Kingdom which I liked the most. Compared with other strategy, survival or city building games, Airborne Kingdom feels a lot more relaxed, and while it does have a good amount of depth to its mechanics, none of them are overly complicated, making it a lot more accessible, and it's genuinely just a joy to play, casually flying your city about, exploring the place, and watching it slowly take form and expand into something worthy of holding the title Airborne Kingdom. Now, alongside the campaign mode, the game also includes a creative mode which grants you unlimited resources, unlocks every technology, and literally just lets you go to town and build whatever you like. There's also a new game plus mode which not only changes up the locations of quest, kingdoms and your starting locations, it also offers an additional challenge by reducing the number of resources available to the player and spreading the landscape out, requiring much more careful planning. So I have to admit that after looking at the eShop screenshots for the game, I was half expecting the Switch version to have potato vision graphics and to be flying around Play-Doh land, but rather surprisingly, the game's visuals are actually pretty good. Sure, the eShop screenshots appear to have been taken from the PC version of the game, and so you do lose a lot of the sharpness and detail from both the environments and city itself, but it's way better than I was expecting, and overall I really liked the visual style of the game, with the world having a kind of diorama aesthetic to it, and your city having that classic steampunk look, with its whirling gears, smoking chimneys, propellers and sails. Now, audio-wise, the game's sound effects are kept to a minimum, which for once was actually rather nice, as their omission really added a kind of serenity and peacefulness to the game as you float amongst the clouds. The music in Airborne Kingdom also really complemented the tone of it, with an original soundtrack featuring a great mixture of acoustic guitars, strings and drums, and the music changes from being quite upbeat and adventure-like in the daytime to more calming and chilled tracks at night, and I thought this was a great little touch. Overall, I thought they did a great job with the graphics and audio with this one. So now we get onto the performance and issues, and while the game handles really well for the most part and it seems to have been well optimised, unfortunately it still suffers from a few frame rate issues, though these only really start to become an issue when the size of your kingdom becomes really large. On the issues side of things, I'd say that the game's biggest problem, like most games in this genre which have been ported to consoles, is its point and click control scheme, because you just don't have the same level of accuracy and speed with a controller that you'd have with a mouse and keyboard on PC. The developers have tried to remedy this by making buildings snap into place, but it can still be really awkward, especially when trying to target smaller features like individual floor tiles, and this same issue carries over to the camera controls, which can also be pretty awkward at times. Aside from this, I'd say that the only other thing I could criticise would be the lack of variety when it comes to the game's quests, because they generally just involve searching for various items or gathering a specific number of materials, and I think that adding an element of danger to the game, perhaps via some kind of additional combat encounters, would have really added a little bit of extra excitement to what for the most part is a very slow paced and relaxing title. All in all though, Airborne Kingdom is one of the most enjoyable city building and resource management games that I've played on the Switch. It's got some well balanced mechanics which put an even focus on the city building elements and the exploration side of things, some decent visuals and audio, and it's generally just a pretty chill title. And when it comes to my own personal rating, I'm going to be giving Airborne Kingdom 4 out of 5 stars. If you're looking for a casual and relaxing city building game which keeps things relatively simple and is perfect for just dipping in and out of an hour at a time, then Airborne Kingdom is definitely worth checking out. And so that about wraps up this review of Airborne Kingdom on the Nintendo Switch. As always, hit that like button if this review helped you out, let me know your thoughts and opinions on the game in the comments section below, and if you've not already subscribed to the channel but enjoy my content, then please consider doing so. For now though, I just want to thank you all once again for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves and game on.